get settled in for our final round of debate and forensic sciasis. Oral interpretation. Oral interpretation of literature involves a work of either prose or poetry. The speaker chooses and practices the reading and delivers the piece using voice and facial expression to interpret the mood and meaning of the piece. It must be from 5 to 7 minutes long. Please enjoy the finals, and we'll turn it over to the timers.
Good afternoon. Once the round has begun, you will be allowed to leave only between speeches. There are to be no photographs, tape recording, or videos taken during the speeches. Please turn off any phones, beepers, pagers, or watch alarms now. Thank you.
Set in Shaukat, India, The Hullabaloo in the Guava Orchard by Kiran Desai is about a boy who becomes a hermit and sits in a tree surrounded by monkeys. This whimsical story is of the hermit's sister, an ambitious young woman named Pinky Chawla, who is charmed by the Hungry Hop ice cream boy and tries to show her affection in the most unexpected manner. Surprisingly, Hungry Hop ice cream boy responds positively, much to the chagrin and horror of their families. This Indian Romeo and Juliet decide to take action, and it creates much ado about nothing. Like an actress, ready for performance, she was prepared. She bore down upon him, dressed in the colors of battle, dark with coal, mouth like a stab wound, storming the bazaar as if at the head of the conquering army. Seeing him, she was filled with a rush of elation and rage. How smiling and placid he was! She thought she might kiss him, but the vein of aggression pounded powerfully within her, and she bit him instead. She bit his ear so hard that the Hungry Hop boy shouted out, and his voice boomeranged about the town. Aye, 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 aye! He was being hurt. He was being murdered. People came running. What happened? What happened? A piece of ear lay upon the ground. The pour of red from Hungry Hop was like the spill of passion and pain. Forced to leave his breakfast because of all the ruckus, the superintendent of police arrived. Arey, what is happening here? The Hungry Hop boy held on to his maimed ear. She attacked me, sir. She attacked me. Hungry Hop was taken to the family clinic. Human bites, Dr. Banerjee was talking to the local newspaper representative, are the most common in the summer and winter season, but can occur all year round. They are more common in the morning than in the afternoon. Indeed, although people concern themselves more with animal bites, human bites should be given close attention, for the human mouth can contain up to 42 species of bacteria. Thus, they can be more dangerous even than spiders or dogs. Pinky was marched to the police station. She walked dignified behind the superintendent, refusing to show any fear. The superintendent asked, Arey, since when do ladies in their town bite gentlemen? You will end up in the mental home if you persist in demonstrating that that is where you belong. She looked at him. She was not frightened by such threats. This very asylum had been brought up several times in relation to her brother, and losing its ominous quality, it had begun to sound like a rather familiar sort of institution. This is a serious matter, really very serious. Yes, you have created quite a to-do here. Just then, one of the other policemen came and whispered something urgently to him. What? Are you the sister of the man who sits up in the tree? Yeah. I'm sorry, we did not know your family name. Please come along with us. We will escort you back to your family. In Shaukat, we honor and respect a hermit. Pinky was glad she had bitten Hungry Hop. In his house, Hungry Hop sat nursing his ear, adorned with small stitches, to remind him when he had been bitten by Pinky Cello. The thought of Pinky went around and around Hungry Hop's head. He could not get her out of his mind. Pinky sat beneath the tree at the Hungry Hop residence, hoping a letter would convince Hungry Hop of her good sense and sanity, and pave the way for more encounters. From the bathroom window, she saw his face. She picked up a stone and fastened her note to it, and threw it with deadly aim straight at the Hungry Hop. He had not noticed her presence until this bullet flew out of nowhere and hit him squarely on the jaw. The next day, she arrived back at exactly the same time, and catching sight of Hungry Hop, she threw him a rose. He responded with his mother's hairnet. This incident marked an important change in their relationship. As the days went by, they managed to exchange all manners of bottles, toffees, sweetmeats, handkerchiefs, nightcloths, a comb, a toothbrush, an ear pick, a bar of soap, a pomegranate, and a towel. When his sister spotted Hungry Hop throwing his mother's petticoat out the window, the family became crazy with worry, keeping constant watch for Pinky, the stalker. Pinky was forced to retreat in tears. The Hungry Hop boy paced up and down his small room, wondering about Pinky's fate, about his own fate. He smuggled an urgent note to Pinky by the faithful milkman. The next morning, she proposed to escape in the Hungry Hop ice cream van and drive far away into a new town. A few days later, he deliriously drove in circles at 4 a.m. through the shadowed streets, and all of a sudden, he became aware of a huge, gray group of people coming up fast behind him. Pinky arrived to discover that Hungry Hop had been caught by the army. Oh, that sorry slug, all trussed up like that. He has let me down in a crucial time. But right there, in front of her, the brigadier cut a dashing figure. She was filled with an urge to tweak his buttocks. Thank you.
What were they thinking? Mark Twain's The Diaries of Adam and Eve, edited by Don Roberts, shows his unique insight on what might have happened as he reveals a possible dialogue between our first parents. Dear diary, this new creature with long hair is a good deal in the way. It is always hanging around and following me about. I don't like this. I'm not used to company. I wish it would stay away with the other animals. Cloudy today. Wind in the east. Think we shall have rain. We? Where did I get that word? I remember now. The other creature uses it.
It tapers like a carrot. I think it is a man. I had never seen a man, but it looked like one, and I feel sure that that is what it is. I was afraid of it at first, for I thought it was going to chase me. But by and by, I found it was only trying to get away, so I tracked it along for several hours.
Been examining the great waterfall. The new creature calls it Niagara Falls. I get no chance to name anything myself. And always the same excuse is offered. It looks like a thing. There's the dodo, for instance. Says the moment that one looks at it, that it
Looks like a dodo.
It wearies me to fret about it, and it does no good anyway. Dodo. It looks no more like a dodo than I do.
All week I
not talk. It is always talking.
Hello? Hello? Do you know where we are?
I had a very good name for the estate, and it was musical and pretty. Garden of Eden.
But it's all woods and rocks and scenery and bears no resemblance to a garden. Therefore, it is called Niagara Falls.
My life is not as happy as it was.
We are getting along very well indeed now. During the last year or two, I have taken all the work of naming things off his hands. And this has been a great relief to him, for he is not a gift in that line, and is evidently very grateful.
It used to be so pleasant and quiet here. This morning found the new creature trying to clod apples out of that forbidden tree.
I tried to get you some of those apples, but I cannot learn to throw straight.
They are forbidden, and you will come to harm.
My name is Eve. I am she, not it.
She has taken up with a snake now. I am glad, because this enables me to get a rest. She says the snake advises her to try the fruit of that tree, and the result will be a
Fine and noble education.
I told her there would be another result too. It would introduce death in the world. I advised her to keep away from the tree. She said she wouldn't. I foresee trouble. We'll emigrate. I escaped last night, about an hour after sunup, as I was riding through a plain. Thousands of animals were grazing. All of a sudden, the plain was a frantic commotion, and every beast was destroying its neighbor. I knew what it meant. Eve had the fruit, and death had come into the world. The tigers ate my horse, paying no attention when I ordered them to desist, and they would have eaten me if I had stayed. I found this place outside the park and was fairly comfortable for a few days, until she found me out.
We are now ordered to work for our living hereafter. We will work together.
I find that she is a good deal of a companion. I see I should be depressed without her, now that I have lost my property.
When I look back, the garden is a dream to me. It was surpassingly beautiful. Now it is lost, and I shall not see it anymore. The garden is lost, but I have found him, and am content. He loves me as well as he can, and I love him with all my strength. Then why is it that I love him? Merely because he is mine. There is no other reason, I suppose. It just comes and cannot explain itself, and doesn't need to.
After all these years, I see that I was mistaken about Eve in the beginning. It is better to live outside the garden with her than inside it without her. Blessed be the apple that brought us near together and taught me to know the goodness of her heart and the sweetness of her spirit.
It is my prayer that we pass from this life together. But if one of us must go first, it is my prayer that it shall be I, for he is strong, and I am weak, and I am not so necessary to him as he is to me. Life without him would be no life. How could I endure it?
Now that she is gone, I know one thing. Wheresoever she was, there was Eden.
Thank you.
Ford Prefect an alien who inhabited Earth until its destruction, and Arthur Dent, his Earthling friend, have just been taken captive by Vogon aliens, who are about to force them to critique their poetry. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Vogon poetry is, of course, the worst in the universe. During a recitation by their poet master, Grunthos the Flatulent, 4 of his audience died of internal hemorrhaging, and the president of the Mid-Galactic Arts Council survived by gnawing one of his own legs off. Grunthos was about to embark on a reading of his epic entitled My Favorite Bath Time Gurgles, when his own major intestine, in a desperate attempt to save civilization, leapt straight up through his neck and throttled his brain. On no account allow a Vogon to read poetry to you. The prisoners were strapped in poetry appreciation chairs. The sweat stood out cold on Ford Prefect's brow and slid around the electrodes strapped to his temples, designed to heighten the experience of the poem. Arthur Dent sat and quivered. He had no idea what he was in for. The Vogon smiled with confidence and began to read.
Oh, Freddle Gruntbuggy.
Spasms racked Ford's body. This was worse than ever he'd been prepared for.
Thy micturations are to me as pleural gabblebludgets on a lurgid bee.
Cried Ford, wrenching his head back as lumps of pain thumped through it.
Gru, I implore thee, my foonting turling drones, and hoopsiously drangle me with crinkly bindle wordles, or I will rend thee in the gobberwarts with my blurgle crunchin'. See if I don't.
Cried Ford.
Now, Earthlings, I present you with a simple choice. Either die in the vacuum of space, or tell me how good you thought my poem was.
Ford was rasping for breath. He rolled his dusty tongue round his parched mouth and moaned. Arthur said brightly, "Actually, I quite liked it." Ford turned and gaped. Here was an approach that had quite simply not occurred to him. The Vogon raised a surprised eyebrow.
Oh, good.
He whirred in astonishment.
Oh yes, I thought that some of the metaphysical imagery was really particularly effective.
Ford continued to stare at him, slowly organizing his thoughts around this totally new concept. Were they really going to be able to bareface their way out of this?
Yes, do continue.
Oh, and interesting rhythmic devices too, which seem to counterpoint the
Ford leaped in. Counterpoint the surrealism of the underlying metaphor of the
humanity of the Vogonity. Ah yes, Vogonity of the poet's compassionate soul.
Arthur felt he was on a home stretch now.
Which contrives through the medium of the verse structure to sublimate this, transcend that, and come to terms with the fundamental dichotomies of the other. And one is left with a profound and vivid insight into
whatever it was the poem was about. The Vogon perused them. For a moment, his embittered racial soul had been touched. But he thought,
No, too little, too late. So what you're saying is that I write poetry because underneath my mean, callous, heartless exterior, I just want to be loved? Is that right?
well, I mean, yes. Don't we all deep down, you know?
No, you are completely wrong. I just write poetry to throw my mean, callous, heartless exterior into sharp relief. I'm going to throw you out of the ship anyway. Guard, take the prisoners to number 3 airlock and throw them out.
What? You can't throw us into space. We're trying to write a book.
Resistance is useless.
Arthur looked round him nervously.
I don't want to die now. I've still got a headache. I don't want to go to heaven with a headache. I'd feel cross and wouldn't enjoy it.
The guard grabbed them firmly round the neck and hoiked them protesting out of the bridge. The Vogon was on his own again.
You said counterpoint the surrealism of the underlying metaphor.
He considered this for a moment and then closed the book with a grim smile.
No, death is too good for them.
The long steel-lined corridor echoed to the feeble struggles of the two humanoids, clamped firmly under rubbery Vogon armpits. They reached the airlock. The guard flung Ford and Arthur through the hatchway into a brightly polished cylindrical chamber.
You know, it's at times like this, when I'm trapped in a Vogon airlock and about to die of asphyxiation in deep space, that I really wish I'd listened to what my mother told me when I was young.
Why? What did she tell you?
I don't know. I didn't listen.
They looked at each other with resignation. A slight hiss built into a deafening roar of rushing air as the outer hatchway opened onto an empty blackness studded with tiny, impossibly bright points of light. Ford and Arthur popped into outer space, like corks from a toy gun. Thank you.
The short story, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, written by James Thurber, is about a wallflower of a man who lives a quiet and unexciting life, constantly dominated and controlled by his wife. Throughout the story, to get away from the monotony of his existence, he lives fantastical scenarios, triggered by words and instances in his life, as often romanticized in fiction, such as a defendant on the witness stand, a captain during a war, and a man facing the firing squad. When he came out into the street, with the overshoes and a box under his arm, Walter Mitty began to wonder what the other thing was his wife had told him to get. She had told him twice, before they set out from their house for Waterbury. In a way, he hated these weekly trips to town. He was always getting something wrong. Kleenex, he thought. Squibs, razor blades. No, toothbrush, toothpaste, bicarbonate, carborundum, initiative, and referendum. He gave up, but she would remember it.
What's its name?
She would ask.
Don't tell me you forgot. What's its name?
A newsboy went by shouting something about the Waterbury trial. Perhaps this will refresh your memory. The district attorney suddenly thrust a heavy automatic at the quiet figure on the witness stand. Have you ever seen this before? Walter Mitty took the gun and examined it expertly. This is my Webley Vickers 5080, he said calmly. An excited buzz ran around the courtroom. The judge rapped for order. You are a crack shot with any sort of firearms, I believe. Objection, shouted Mitty's attorney. We have shown that the defendant cannot have fired the shot. We have shown that he wore his right arm in a sling on the night of the 14th of July. Walter Mitty raised his hand briefly, and the bickering attorneys were still. With any known make of gun, I could have killed Gregory Fitzhurst at 300 feet with my left hand. Pandemonium broke loose in the courtroom. A woman's scream rose above the bedlam, and suddenly
A lovely, dark-haired lady was in Walter Mitty's arms. The district attorney struck at her savagely. Without rising from his chair, Mitty let the man have it at the point of the chin. "You miserable cur!"
Poppy biscuit.
He stopped walking, and the buildings of Waterbury rose up out of the misty courtroom and surrounded him again. A woman who was passing said to her companion, "He said puppy biscuits. The man said puppy biscuits to himself." Walter Mitty hurried on. He went into an A&P.
I want some biscuits for small young dogs,
he said to the clerk.
Any special brand, sir?
The greatest pistol shot in the world, thought a moment.
It says on the box, puppies bark for it.
His wife would be through at the hairdresser's in 15 minutes. Mitty saw him looking at his watch. She didn't like to get to the hotel first. She would want him to be there, waiting for her, as usual. He found a big leather chair in the lobby, facing a window, and he put the overshoes and the puppy biscuits on the floor beside it. He picked up an old copy of Liberty and sank down into the chair. "Can Germany conquer the world through the air?" Walter Mitty looked at the pictures of bombing planes and of ruined streets. "The cannonading has got the wind up in young Raleigh, sir," said the sergeant. Captain Mitty looked at him through tousled hair. "Get him to bed with the others. I'll fly alone." "But you can't, sir. It takes 2 men to handle that bomber, and the Archies are pounding hell out of the air. Von Richtman's circus is between here and Solier. Somebody's gotta get that ammunition dump. I'm going over. Spot of brandy." He poured a drink for the sergeant and one for himself. War thundered and whined around the dugout and battered at the door. There was a rending of wood and splinters flew through the room. "A bit of a near thing. The box barrage is closing in. We only live once, Sergeant. Or do we?" He poured another brandy and tossed it off. "I never seen a man hold his brandy like you, sir. Begging your pardon, sir." Captain Mitty stood up and strapped on his huge Webley Vickers automatic. "It's 40 kilometers through hell, sir. After all, what is it?" Mitty finished one last brandy. The pounding of the cannon increased. There was the rapid tapping of the machine guns, and from somewhere came the menacing pukta, pukta, pukta of the new flamethrowers. Walter Mitty walked to the door of the dugout, humming a Plus de ma Blanc. He turned and waved to the sergeant. "Cheerio!" Something struck at his shoulder.
I've been looking all over this hotel for you. Why'd you have to hide in this old chair? How'd you expect me to find you? Things close in. What? You get what's its name? The puppy biscuits. What's in the box? Overshoes. Couldn't you put them on in the store? I was thinking, does it ever occur to you that I'm sometimes thinking?
What? She looked at him.
I'm gonna take your temperature when I get you home.
It was 2 blocks to the parking lot. At the drugstore in the corner, she said,
Wait here for me. I forgot something. I won't be a minute.
She was more than a minute. Walter Mitty lighted a cigarette. It began to rain. Rain with sleet in it. He stood up against the wall of the drugstore, smoking. He put his shoulders back and his heels together. "To hell with the handkerchief," said Walter Mitty scornfully. He took one last drag on his cigarette and snapped it away. Then, with that faint, fleeting smile playing about his lips, he faced the firing squad, erect and motionless, proud and disdainful. Walter Mitty the undefeated, inscrutable to the last.
Thank you.
In this excerpt, stout, balding, and unhappily married Professor Sidney Kugelmax is fed up with his wife Daphne.
a frumpy and overbearing woman. So, he seeks the help of an eccentric magician to help rekindle the romance in his life. The Kugelmass episode by Woody Allen. Kugelmass, a professor of humanities at City College, was unhappily married for the second time. Daphne Kugelmass was an oaf. I need to meet a woman. I need to have an affair. I need softness. I need flirtation. But it can't be anyone at City College, because Daphne also works there. Not that anyone on my faculty has any great shakes. But some of those co-workers.
Dr. Mandel shifted in his chair.
Mr. Kugelmass, I am an analyst, not a magician. Then perhaps what I need is a magician.
A couple of weeks later, while Kugelmass and Daphne were moping around at home one night like two pieces of old furniture, the phone rang.
I'll get it. Hello? Kugelmass. Kugelmass? This is Bursky. Oh? Bursky. Or should I say, the great Bursky? Pardon me? I hear you're looking all over town for a magician to bring a little exotica into your life. Yes? Shh, don't hang up. Where are you calling from, Bursky?
Early the following afternoon, Kugelmass climbed 3 flights of stairs in a broken-out apartment house in Brooklyn. Seconds later, he was greeted by a short, thin, waxy-looking man.
You are Bursky the Great? The Great Bursky? You want tea? No, I want romance, I want music, I want love and beauty. But not tea, eh? Okay, sit down.
Persky went to the back room and reappeared, pushing before him a large object on squeaky roller skate wheels.
Persky, what's your scam? Pay attention. This is some beautiful effect. Get into the cabinet. If I throw any novel into this cabinet with you, shut the doors and tap it 3 times, you will find yourself projected into that book. You can meet any of the women created by the world's best writers, and carry on all you like. Then, when you've had enough, you give a yell, and I'll see you back in a split second. Persky, are you some kind of outpatient? I'm telling you, it's on the level. What are you telling me? That this cheesy homemade box of yours can take me on a ride like you're describing? For a double soba?
Kugelmass reached for his wallet.
So, who do you want to meet? Sister Carrie? Hester Prynne? Ophelia? Hey, what about Temple Drake? Although for a man your age, she'd be a workout. French. I want to have an affair with a French lover. What about Natasha Warren Peace? I said French. What about Emma Bovary? You got it, Kugelmass. Give me a holler when you've had enough.
Persky tossed in a paperback copy of Flaubert's novel.
Are you sure this is safe? Is anything safe in this crazy world?
Persky rapped 3 times on the cabinet and then flung open the doors. Kugelmass was gone. He appeared in the bedroom of Charles and Emma Bovary's house at Yonville. Before him was a beautiful woman, alone with her back turned to him as she folded some linen. Emma turned in surprise. "Who are you?" She spoke in the same fine English translation as the paperback. Realizing that it was he whom she had addressed, he said,
"Oh, excuse me, I'm C.B. Kugelmass, a professor of humanities. Oh, boy."
Emma Bovary smiled flirtatiously. "Would you like a drink? A glass of wine, perhaps?"
She is beautiful,
Kugelmass thought. What a contrast with the troglodyte who shared his bed.
Yes, some wine. A white. No red. No white. Make it white.
Charles is out for the day. Her voice full of playful implication. After the wine, they went for a stroll in the lovely French countryside. I love what you have on. I've never seen anything like it around here. It's so modern.
It's called a leisure suit. It was marked down.
For the next hour, they reclined under a tree and told each other deeply meaningful things with their eyes. After a moment of silence, he kissed her. Then Kugelmass sat up. He had just remembered he had to meet Daphne at Bloomingdale's.
I must go, but don't worry, I'll be back.
I hope so. He kissed her again and yelled,
Okay, Persky, I gotta be at Bloomingdale's by 3:30.
There was an audible pop, and Kugelmass was back in Brooklyn.
So, did I lie? Look, Persky, I'm really late to meet the Ball and Chain at Lexington Ave. But when can I go again? Tomorrow? My pleasure. Just bring it to it. And don't mention this to anybody.
Kugelmass hailed a cab and sped off to the city. His heart danced on point.
I am in love. I am the possessor of a wonderful secret.
What he didn't realize was that at this very moment, students in various classrooms across the country were saying to their teachers,
Who is this character on page 100? A bald Jew kissing Madame Bovary?
Daphne Kugelmass was in the bathroom accessories department of Bloomingdale's when Kugelmass arrived.
Where you be?
She snapped.
It's 4:30. I got held up in a trip.
Thank you.
Based on the true story of the village of Ayham, the novel Year of Wonders by Geraldine Brooks takes place in 1666. An infected piece of cloth carries the Black Plague from London. As death touches every household, the villagers give up prayers and turn to witch hunting. The plague is cruel. Its blows fall and fall again upon raw sorrow, so that before you have mourned one person that you love, another is ill in your arms. Jamie suffered for 5 days before God finally saw fit to take him. The strange circles bloomed on him, vivid crimson welts, rising in rings and then hardening into crusts. I laid Jamie in the ground beside Tom and stood with Lib Hancock while her husband was buried. The two of us clung to each other in our grief. Prayer fragments formed and then dissolved. My husband dead, and yet not me. My neighbors, and yet not me. My babies. My babies. It was the third Sennight after Jamie's death when I heard a horrible yelling. There were 10 or 12 people in a rough circle. In the center was Mem Gowdy, her frail old arms bound before her. Mary Hadfield broke from the throng and flung herself down beside poor Mem. You killed my family, hag! I heard you curse us as you left my door. Mem Gowdy did no such thing. Why are you saying this? Why do you defend her, Anna Frith? Do not your own babies lie rotting in the ground from her cursing? Let's swim up, then you'll see if she's witch or no. flooding mine. "You throw her down there and you'll be murderers," I yelled, trying to get in front of Brad Hamilton. When I grabbed his arm, I saw that his face was distorted by drink and grief. And then I remembered. He'd buried his son John that day. Brad Hamilton flung me aside, and I missed my footing and fell hard, my head hitting a croft of limestone. The earth spun and turned dark. When I came to myself, Mary Hadfield was wailing. "She's sinking! She's sinking! She's no witch! God forgive us! We killed her!" I struggled to my feet and peered down into the dark, but I could see nothing. I dangled for a moment over the pit before someone reached out an arm and pulled me back. It was Anise Gowdy. Breathing hard from running all the way uphill from the village, she wasted no words. She had a rope tied ready around her waist. She slung it over the old tern tree and secured it. Then she slid straight down into that slimy dark. There was a great deal of splashing, and then she began to climb. The limp body of her aunt lashed to her back. As she neared the top, I reached down to grasp her arm and pull her up the last few feet. I laid them upon the ground, and Anise pressed. Dark water spewed from her mouth. The old woman wasn't breathing. "She's dead." Anise knelt beside the body, covered her aunt's mouth with her own, and breathed into it. Mem Gowdy sputtered, groaned, and opened her eyes. The relief I felt lasted only for an instant, for Lib, in a crazed voice, began crying. "Anise Gowdy's raised the dead! It's her that's the witch! Seize her!" "Lib, don't be a fool! Who among us here hasn't put their mouth to a lamb born on breathing?" Cries were coming now from every twisted mouth as the mob surged at Anise where she knelt beside her aunt, leaping upon her and clawing at her flesh. Anise was strong and fought them, and I tried to help her, grasping at one and then another, trying to pull them off her. I saw the noose go around Anise's neck and knew they planned to hang her with her own rope. What I did not foresee was what happened next, for Anise Gowdy ceased her struggling then and drew herself up to her full, impressive height. A trickle of bright blood ran from her mouth. "Yes," her voice deep and uncanny, "I am the devil's creature, and mark me, he will be revenged for my life." "Anise, don't say these things. You know they're not so." She looked at me where I lay on the ground and gave a ghostly smile. Her amber eyes glinted, yellow as a cat's. "Yes, I have lain with the devil, and he is mighty and cold as ice to the touch. I have not lain with him alone. No, I tell you now I have seen your wives lie with him. Yours, Brad Hamilton, and yours, John Gordon, and yours too, Martin Highfield." The women moaned or screamed their outrage. "He's a stallion compared to you." Here, she fixed her glare on the men she had named, and I saw them flinching. "Every wife has said that her pleasure is extreme, far greater than with any of you." She laughed as she said this. The men bellowed like oxen then, and tugged as one upon the rope. It snapped tight and silenced her laughter. Thank you.
That concludes 6 incredible stories voiced by some very talented public speakers. Let's have one more round of applause. Thank you, judges, coaches, parents, and audience members. You've been a fantastic audience. For those of you who traveled here to be with us, I hope you enjoyed your time here at GIST.